Hey everyone, Mike Wolf here with Author Spotlights, and today I have with me John Weiser, who currently serves as chairman of the Senior Advisory Council of the United Religions Initiative, the world's largest grassroots interfaith organization. He previously served as the chairman of the board of the Graduate Theological Union, a partnership of 9 seminaries of differing denominations. A graduate of Harvard Law School, he served as the general counsel of Bechtel Group, and which is an international engineering and construction firm. And earlier, he was a partner and member of the management committee of Sherman and Sterling, a major Wall Street law firm. He's here today to talk about his book, Grasp the Nettle. John, welcome to the Author Spotlight Show. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Nice to chat with you.
You too. So tell us, before we get into the book, kind of give me like the cliff notes of how you describe this book.
Well, Bishop Swing is a remarkable guy, and I wanted to tell my kids about him because he was going to come to my 90th birthday party, and then he had to cancel because of COVID. So I decided to write this book and give my kids an overview of what this remarkable man has done.
And was there a certain moment when you knew you needed to tell this story about Bishop Swing?
Yes. Right after I realized he wasn't going to meet my children, they'd all come out for my 90th birthday. So I figured it was time to tell them about him.
Okay, and what was their reaction to the story?
Well, I think they all enjoyed it because he has done some remarkable things. I don't think any of them have had a chance to meet him yet, because they mostly live on the East Coast, and we're out here in California. And he's about an hour away from me here. So I don't see him very often except on Zoom.
Okay.
Like we were on a Zoom call this morning for the United Religions Initiative. So we still spend a lot of time talking with each other. I'm just reading one of his new books to kind of give him a little comment on it. So we'll see how that goes.
And how did your personal relationship start with him? How long have you known him? Give us kind of the backstory.
Well, when I was running into term limits at the Graduate Theological Union, there was a remarkable woman there. And I asked her what I should do next, because I had to leave the Graduate Theological Union. She said, well, I can either get you on the board of Catholic Charities, or I can introduce you to Bishop Swing. So they tell me about him. And she said, well, he's just launching this new venture called United Religions Initiative. She told me a little bit about it. So I said, why don't you set up a lunch for him? So he and I had lunch with his wife, and they gave me a quick interview. And after about an hour and a half, he said, I'm going to set up this new thing called the President's Council. Would you join it? I said, okay. That was almost 20 years ago. We've been working together ever since.
Wow. And what is the President's Council?
Well, it was basically what some people call Bill's friends. It was a group of people he knew who were well-heeled and were good friends of his and were happy to help him in any way they could. And some of them were very wealthy, and so they were sort of the financial support for the organization for the first 5 or 10 years. Now we're starting to move into a more ordinary fundraising approach.
And what can you tell me about Bishop Swing that kind of give you some traits that kind of make him stand out compared to people nowadays?
Well, he's approaching his 90s, but he's still in great shape. One of the key factors about him is he's a wonderful golf player. And somebody once said, what a great name for a golf player, Swing. Anyway, Swing meets a lot of interesting people on the golf course, and he makes a lot of friends that way. And the most remarkable thing about him is he's not afraid to do things. Big challenges come up and he just moves right ahead. And most of the time he succeeds. It's like this United Religions Initiative. In the book, I tell the story. He was the Bishop of California, and his basic place was Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, beautiful church. And in 1995, the United Nations was going to celebrate its 50th anniversary. And they decided to celebrate it in San Francisco because that's where the charter had been signed. So they called him up and they said, we're going to gather together the leaders of all the world's countries. Would you gather together the leaders of the world's religions? We said, okay. And then he woke up the next day and he said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know most of these people. I'm a guy in California. But he went ahead and he did it, and he organized a wonderful meeting of, I don't know, a dozen or so major religious leaders. And as he was thinking about this, he said, look, the world's countries have for 50 years gotten together to talk about the problems. But the religions of the world, which are supposed to be taking care of us, have never talked to each other. I'm going to found the United Religions, like the United Nations. So he took leave from the bishop's job, got an extended leave, and went around the world talking to religious leaders about his idea. And what he found out was, unfortunately, that none of the religious leaders were interested in his idea. They were much more focused on their own religion and how to promote that. And at that time, which was 20 years ago, they weren't particularly interested in interfaith activity. So he was failing on his primary role, but as he was traveling, he was giving a lot of talks. And what he realized is there was a lot of enthusiasm at the grassroots for something that would bring religions together and avoid so many conflicts which are based on religious differences. So he thought about it, he talked to people, eventually decided he would found something, not the United Religions, bringing the world's religions together, but United Religions Initiative, which would bring together people from different religions. And he was very fortunate to be put in touch with a man called Dee Hock, who had been the president of the Visa card. And Dee had been a banker in Oregon, and he'd gone to a meeting of what was then called Bank AmeriCard. And he went to this meeting and he realized things were not working very well. There were a lot of banks there. They weren't particularly happy that they had to use another bank's card. So he asked the group if he could go off with a smaller group of people and try to come up with another idea. So they said, okay, and he went off and he devised what's now called Visa card, which is a system that's the largest credit card in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bill Swing was put in touch with him and he went to see him. Turned out Dee Hock had retired and was living maybe an hour south of San Francisco. So they met, and he asked Dee Hock, could you help me with my idea? And Dee Hock said, well, I can help you if you want to do it the old-fashioned way with leadership at the top, directing people below. So I will do it if you want to do it the way Mother Nature does, which is where most of the decision-making is lower down. So Bill Swing said, okay. And then Dee Hock said, well, this is going to take a couple of years. I'm going to meet with you every week. And Swing said, well, unfortunately, I'm a bishop. I have a full-time job. And Dee Hock said, well, either you want to do this or you don't. So Bill agreed, and they met, I think, every other week for several years to put together the structure, the basic idea of United Religions Initiative, which they called chaotic, which was the combination of the word chaos and the word order. So there's chaos in the sense that there are people all over the place doing their thing, and there's order in the sense that there is a central organization which provides a network for all these groups out in the world. And today we've got well over 1,000 groups in about 125 countries, and we're just about to embark on a major expansion effort. So it's really quite something. And Bill
Did
Swing has told him, I'm 89. Next year I'll be 90, and I think that's when I'm going to bow out. So you better get ready to have somebody else do what I do, which is going to be very hard to do because he's such a remarkable guy. And he's kind of what do you call those things? There's something that holds everything in place. Whenever there's a fight, the people are fighting, he's sitting over on the side, but he's ready to give advice and help resolve the issues. So we just went through a difficult time. We had a wonderful executive director who had previously won a prize, a Nobel Prize, for the work he had done with some royalty in the Middle East to get rid of landmines, because he himself had stepped on a landmine as a younger man and lost the bottom half of his right leg. So he committed himself to reducing landmines, and they had a very successful effort to get rid of mines, mostly in the Middle East. And then he retired from that and he became the executive director of United Religions Initiative. But he was a feisty guy and he was always picking fights with people. And eventually it became clear that he had to go somewhere else. So a few months ago, he agreed to retire, and he had hired a young woman who had worked with him before, and she became the new executive director. So we've just made that transition, and she has big plans. So we hope we're off into a new phase.
Now, trying to bring different religions together, you would imagine there must be some conflict or some pushback. Did he experience any pushback during that time?
Well, so far, the way it works is the basic unit is called a cooperation circle, and it's a combination of at least 5 people, perhaps more, sometimes many more. And among those 5, they have to be representatives of 3 different religions. So you saw with you, me, and somebody else that we know, we agree to work together. We pick what we want to work on. We decide how we want to work on it, but we have to support ourselves. We don't get money from headquarters. And so you have these groups of people. They say most of them are pretty small groups, 5 or 7 or 10 people. We have some cooperation circles that are thousands of people. There's a very large group in Europe, whose name I now forgot. But anyway, they've been around a long time. And when they heard about United Religions Initiative, they asked if they could join, and they were welcomed in. And they're still there helping us because they know a lot of people, introduce us to a lot of people. And so they've been a big help in getting URI to grow in Europe. So
Go ahead.
While the major religions may still have differences, most of these people have learned how to work together and live together.
If Bishop Swing had to kind of attack this now in the current society with social media and computers, how do you think it would be different if you tried to start this right now in today's day and age?
I'm more in his generation. I'm not on social media. It's hard for me to say. I think I agree that what you're suggesting, which is probably be a lot more difficult today, because it's
totally
so
agree.
easy. So easy to foment differences and problems.
I think people think social media connects people, but I think it actually divides people in a lot of ways, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, I think I agree with you.
So tell us, what now that this is all established, what is the future of the organization as he's stepping down?
Well, we hope it will continue in full flight, and we'll expand to new places and bring in new people and just continue to prosper. That's what we hope. And at the moment, it looks like that will happen. We have entirely new leadership now. We have a new executive director. We have a new chairman of our board. We have a new group of people who used to be on the President's Council. It's now called the Senior Advisory Council. It has the same function of providing counsel to the management and to help in fundraising, some from their own pockets, others because they have a nice network of friends who are willing to work with them.
Okay.
So I think the outlook is pretty good.
And if someone was to purchase your book now and they weren't aware of the background story, what parts of the book are going to basically speak to them as they read this book? What would you say? What chapters, what parts of the story are really going to speak to people who don't know the backstory?
Well, I think the first couple of chapters, I hope, hooked them. Trying to remember what the first chapter was. The second chapter is about the formation of URI. The first chapter is about the AIDS crisis in San Francisco. We collected in San Francisco AIDS patients from around the world. They came to San Francisco because here they were accepted. There were others like them, so they didn't feel left out. Whereas back home, they were usually ostracized or pushed into the corner or kept in the closet. So there's a very large group of people here, but we also had AIDS that nobody knew about, hadn't been identified yet. Only slowly did they realize that there was this epidemic going around. And most of the people in the clergy and in polite society desperately wanted to stay away from AIDS patients. They're considered like the lepers of yesterday. Bishop Swing did it the other way. He rented an apartment downtown in the Castro district, which was the AIDS district. And he went down regularly to meet with AIDS patients and talk to them. He said what he realized is these were all people looking for help from religion, from clergy. And so he decided to do what he could to help them. And he ended up ordaining a lot of gay people who wanted to go into service. So it was really quite something. So he had the courage to go and step in where other people didn't want to touch it.
Now tell us about your writing process. Did you have notes kept about the backstory, or did you have to just get everything from memory? How long did it take you to write this? That kind of thing.
I think this book took about a year and a half or so. Fortunately, Bishop Swing had written a couple of books. Fortunately, he and I could talk almost every other day. So I would get an idea of which topic to cover. I would do some background reading. I would talk to him, and then I'd start writing. So it actually went pretty well. I wrote an earlier book. It took me much longer. But this one went pretty fast. I've got a third book just being published now. Also went pretty fast.
Wow.
So I'm getting there.
Pretty prolific. And tell us now, what platforms do you have it released on? Is it on Amazon? Is it on Barnes & Noble? Where can people buy this book?
This is on Amazon.
Okay.
All of my books have been on Amazon because they provide a pretty easy platform for people like me who are self-publishers to work with them, get the book printed, and they, of course, handle the distribution. So it works quite well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have the link for our viewers down below to your book if they want to purchase that. Now, what else would you say? Give us some other things, maybe a little story people might find in this book about Bishop.
Well, the other thing I'd tell you about him is that he's a golf player.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that earlier, but that is one of the chapters in the book because what I like about golf, I don't play it anymore, but like about golf is the ball is just sitting there. Nobody's going to hit it but you.
Yeah.
You're fully responsible for what happens. It's not like somebody's trying to throw a fastball by you. It's just sitting there. So it's really a matter of self-discipline and self-control. But then there are people like Bishop Swing who use it as an occasion to develop friendships. He has the same foursome he plays with every Saturday morning, probably for the last 30 years. But he plays with lots of other people, and many of the people who were on what we call the President's Council were people that he played with, played golf with, and sometimes took a little money from them on the course. So he did. And the other thing, of course, you've got to practice, you got to work at it. It doesn't happen by itself. So there's a lot of discipline involved in golf, which I think sort of characterizes Bill, because while he's a very friendly guy, very open, there's no question that he's a very hard worker.
Was he
And
competitive? Did you play back? Did you play back in the day with him?
no, I
No.
never met him until long after I had a stroke that impaired my arm. But anyway, he was on the ball team in grammar school. Then he was on the ball team when he was in at Kenyon College. He was in the basketball team. So he was also playing something, usually competitive. But his father had been a golf pro, so he learned how to play golf early on in his life, and he continued that.
Did
So
he ever play with any pros?
I'm sure he did. He usually plays in the Pebble Beach Pro Am, so he would be paired with some professional player because I think he's probably a single digit
Handicap?
handicap. Yeah.
I think most players' dream is to play Pebble Beach. I would love to play Pebble Beach. I stopped playing about 8 years ago, but back then I would have given anything to play Pebble Beach.
Yes, I can believe it's such a beautiful course.
Yeah.
I've been on it, but never played it.
Now, San Francisco, you mentioned a few times. That seemed to be a key area where you guys were focused. I know this is not kind of off topic, but have you been back there, and what do you think of what's happened to the city recently?
Well, I grew up in New York City and I moved out to San Francisco probably 40 years ago when I took a wonderful job with Bechtel Group, which is a fantastic company. And I lived not in San Francisco, but north in Marin because we have 8 kids and we needed a lot of room. So I was never deeply involved in the politics of San Francisco, but it's still a beautiful city and I hope they get themselves straightened out.
I do. It's a shame to see the businesses leaving there. Hopefully, they can turn it around and rebuild it and get it going. It is a beautiful city. I was there maybe 15 years ago before all the stuff kind of happened, and it was a
Yes,
phenomenal place to visit.
yes.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time here on the Author Spotlight Show. Now, folks, if you're watching, again, the book is Grasp the Nettle, and I'm going to put the link down below to the book so you can get that on Amazon. And that's basically it. We thank you so much, John, for your time and your information and your insight. It sounds like both you and Bishop Swing have lived incredible lives and a lot more to go, hopefully. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Been a pleasure chatting with you.
You too. Take care.